Okay, so our next piece is about Jean-Michel Basquiat, and he is or was a street artist who became famous for his painting. So we're going to talk a little bit about him for a while. So this is based on an article by Rob Perrée. It's called Jean-Michel Basquiat, the Poet. Jean-Michel Basquiat is one of the most famous artists at the moment. He died almost 30 years ago at the age of 27. A lot of artists are influenced by him, especially black artists. His work is popular among young people. I'm wondering how much of a poet he was. He started his career with text on walls in Lower Manhattan. In a lot of his drawings and paintings, text play an important role. Okay, so he's born in New York. His dad is Jamaican, African American, and his mom is Puerto Rican. And he grows up in a middle class neighborhood. Um, they own their own apartment, and in fact, they own the whole building of apartments. I think his dad is an accountant or a CPA, wears a suit. He's doing pretty well. Jean-Michel goes to high school. He quits school. He leaves home at the age of 18. He goes to Manhattan. Now, Manhattan at the time was not the Manhattan that we know today. Back then, apartments were relatively inexpensive. Uh, Groups of artists, musicians, poets, philosophers, intellectuals gravitated to Manhattan. It was kind of like another Greenwich Village type of place. There were service jobs, working in a coffee shop or local bar or restaurant. So artists could support themselves while they worked on their artworks. But Jean-Michel Basquiat becomes a street person, sometimes begging for money. He doesn't really have a job. He and another friend go to this area of New York called Soho, which was an up-and-coming artist haven with lots of art galleries, art supply stores. Became kind of a hangout for up-and-coming artists. And he would write these texts on the walls of buildings and fences and wherever he could in spray paint. And he would always sign whatever the text was with uh, a abbreviation, kind of a pen name called SAMO. And what it means is same old ship, but if you change the P in ship to a T, you'll have a more accurate phrase. Same old ship. And he would use a circle with a C in the middle. Now, that is actually a legal clause, you could say, and it means copyright. Now, if you're a musician or a poet or a writer, at the end of your newly created piece, you would write your name with that circle C. And that means that the copyright is pending. And it's actually a legal statement that means no one can copy that piece of work because In legalese, this is something that is being in the process of being copywritten. So it's kind of a protection, a copyright protection. So he would do this at the end of whatever his text was on the walls. And he was unknown. Nobody knew who SAMO was. So eventually he gets outed and he starts to write SAMO is dead. Okay. So a couple of other things that he used to do was he would have these notebooks, like you get a composition book for school. And just a one page at a time, he would never write on the back. He writes his notes and ideas for his artwork. And he kind of must have had a fortuitous thinking because these notebooks eventually become very expensive to buy as an artist's reference work. Okay, so in the 70s and 80s, New York was covered with graffiti, spray painted and drawn images, signs, tags, or words on walls, trains, fences, in restrooms, and on various types of surfaces. Expressions of a hip hop culture that wanted to manifest itself in the public space, sometimes to get a social message across, but more often just to mark territory or to communicate with peers. So we've talked about this in some of our other uh, readings about territory and marking your space. Uh, okay, so he again he doesn't really have a real job. He eventually gets a girlfriend and he moves in with her, and she talks him into getting an electrician helper job. And he tries it for one day and doesn't work out, so he quits and he makes an arrangement with her that he'll paint all day and she can be the breadwinner. Lucky her. Okay, so he creates these little postcards with taking his graffiti idea and now putting it onto paper. And he sees another famous artist in New York, Andy Warhol, a great pop culture uh, artist. You've seen his Campbell soup cans or his Marilyn Monroe pictures. He sees Warhol in a restaurant with his business manager, and there's actually a movie about Jean-Michel Basquiat, and it shows this particular scene. Now, David Bowie plays the part of Andy Warhol and does an excellent job. So, if you ever have a chance to see the movie, please do. So he goes into the restaurant, and Andy Warhol kind of likes his little designs, and he buys some of his postcards for a couple dollars each. You they're worth a lot of money now. So nevertheless, he kind of gets discovered for his work. He expands the postcard to actually big art canvases He kind of the new kid on the block. He's invited to present his work in some of the art galleries in and around New York City. He becomes instantly successful and famous. Of course, he's still in a street kid mentality. He doesn't have a bank account. His paintings are sold for cash. The girlfriend talks about she'd come home and she'd start cleaning up around the apartment, and she'd open up a book and there's $1,000 inside the book. Or she'd look under the teapot and there's $2,000 under a teapot mat. So he had thousands and thousands of dollars at this time, and he's becoming real rich, real fast, very talented in art, but absolutely no financial reasoning or idea how to handle money or what to do with money. So he is a perfect game to be taking advantage of, which he was. Um, he leaves New York. He goes to California. He paints out in Los Angeles. He's kind of supervised by some famous art gallery people out there. So he becomes famous not only in New York, but throughout the country. Another art gallery owner, I think from Sweden, recognizes his work. He brings his work to Europe. He tours Europe. He goes out to Hawaii, which was his favorite place to paint. And when he painted, he would have texts of different books, classical books, even Gray's Anatomy, a medical text. Um, he would have stories about some of his favorite African American heroes, Dizzy Gillespie, Jackie Robinson, a famous baseball player. A lot of what he writes in a textual way comes directly from those classical stories. He even uses the chapter headings in the Moby Dick as some of his what he draws from to add into his art form. So he's combining street art with classical text from literature and pictures and putting it all together. And it's really kind of a scattered modern art is what it is. And so he, like I said, he has really no strong leadership abilities for himself. And he gets involved with drugs, very hard drugs, and he dies of a heroin overdose at the age of 27. Now, since then, of course, like most artists, they become rich and famous after their death, which is his case as well.